So you're now stepping into the Marvel universe, and I don't mean the Marvel universe on an imaginative level. I mean, let's talk about the practicality of working with Kevin Feige, working with Marvel. What were the conversations leading up to this?
Um, oh, there were many. Worth saying, I love that music from Doyle in that clip as well, and it's great. I love doing that scene with, Hopkins is he's just such a marvelous actor, and those two lads are just fantastic, fantastic. That was great. It was just a big 150% pleasure. Just great, great. I'm very proud of it. Very darling, wonderful guys, wonderful. So,
I wasn't going to let you miss.
Marvel. Yes. So, I mean, there was quite a lot of talking to begin with, just to establish, did we want to make the same film? They were very interested and intrigued in working with me, but at the same time, I just made a number of films that not many people had gone to see, including Love's Labour's Lost, so I was not exactly hot. But they also, interestingly, because the Marvel Universe has expanded in such a way and now seems like it's this unstoppably successful, ever hit-making machine, but at that stage, they were just 2 movies into this new world. They'd done Iron Man brilliantly with Robert, and then the Hulk, which had not been quite as sort of conspicuously commercially successful, but was still a wonderful piece of work in its way. But anyway, so this was going to be, they all said, the most difficult thing to do because, big blonde guy, horses riding across a rainbow bridge in space, not so sure. And there were various faces they used to put up on the wall of things that we mustn't be. And I didn't know this character, but you will, maybe Fabio? Was it Fabio? There's a guy.
Oh, wow.
A guy, there was a phrase, can't be Fabio, can't be Fabio. Okay, we'll try not to do that. So it took quite a while. It took a while of conversations, and I remember coming out here, and I think I got the job. And this was definitely, back to auditions, this was definitely something where I had to, show them that I could sort of do it and that I was interested. But the same thing works the other way. I wanted to see, well, what do they fancy for this kind of thing? And would they, in fact, allow a scene like that? Did they want a scene like this? Because I wanted that scene, and that was a key scene for me in the movie. That gave it the weight, and they all sort of, kind of pegs in the ground of a certain kind of intensity that allows you to get away with horses riding across a rainbow bridge because you feel the passions are that sort of deep. So they were, and I came here and I was rehearsing a play, but I remember flying in the Friday, and I arrived that afternoon, and I went straight to the very tiny Marvel office that was then, and I'd written 3 pages of a script. I thought, I'll do the first 3 pages of a screenplay, so I'll write it. Here's the tone of the Thor that I would make, and I read it to them.
Was there no screenplay in place?
There had been, but as you might imagine, 50 years of comics and an infinite number of possibilities for how to start it, and yet it needed to reflect or refer to the rest of the universe, but needed to be its own thing. There are a trillion ways to go, some very exotic. If people know this comic well, there's a character called Beta Ray Bill, who's an incredibly powerful character, but maybe strong stuff for a first picture. There were just a million ways to go. They needed somebody to come in and say, I'm choosing this. And so I read my pages and said, look, this is my spin on it. This is how I inflect it. And then I went away, and then we kept having conversations, and finally we sort of, they take a long time to arrive at any decision, is my experience, in a good way. Kevin is a muller. He goes away and he thinks, and when we came to, for instance, cast the 2 boys, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston, that was a long process. And even then, on the morning in which we made the calls, we came in. I remember Kevin Feige wandering around that table, this tiny little conference table. It's just me and him and one of the executives, Craig Kyle, on that Saturday morning. And it was 5 to 10. I'd already booked a call to Hemsworth and to Hiddleston, and he still wasn't sure whether we were going to go with this. And I kept saying, it's these guys. It is these 2 guys. Chris Hemsworth is Thor. Tom Hiddleston is Loki. You're gonna be okay. And he knew, but it was, and then we made the call, and it was a wonderful moment. We got Chris. He was in Vancouver making Cabin in the Woods, and the length of the pause after which we said, "Thank you very much. We'd like to invite you, please, sir, to consider playing the role of Thor in the film Thor." Was a very long pause, and then we got Tom was at the Pictures in London. You're going to see and he was so overexcited. He said, "Oh, I've just come. This was a wonderful Albanian film. It's so dark, and it was about this refugee." I said, "Hold on a second. That sounds great. Give me the title at the end of this call. Meantime, we want to tell you that we'd love you to play Loki in Thor." And then there was another long pause, as long as the one that Chris had given us. And it was a beautiful moment. It was lovely, but it took a long time to do it. But it was very personal. Sorry, long-winded answer. Working with Kevin is very, very enjoyable. I regard him as a very, very dear friend, and that process is very unusual. It's a studio plus he's the producer. He's a studio and he's the producer, and it's very passionate and very.
They have final cut. They have final cut.
For sure.
And what do they want to change that you hesitated about, disagreed over?
Well, we didn't have. I guess we didn't have. One of the things that I think I tend to do is want on the way in to really establish what it is we're doing, rather than it being necessarily an experimental process or one where simply when we put all the bits together, we'll start throwing them up in the air and seeing what gets the most ticks in a box in a preview. And with this, I always thought, there are at least 3 movies in this, if it's successful enough to continue, that just tell the Thor story, let alone the way it interlinks to the rest of the universe. And I think my job really was to hang on to that. My job was to direct and hang on and not let it go flying off, even though there were very good places it could have gone. There were never got to have this, mustn't have that. That kind of standoff. I've only been in that kind of position once or twice, and I certainly wasn't in that position here.
Would you do another Marvel film?
Yeah, I mean, what I found was that I just enjoyed the process of working with those people, and I loved the boys and the girls as well. It was great. So that was fun, but it was a long time, and they were way too quick for me to get straight back into another single sort of story in terms of working on it at that time. So who knows? Who knows? It was a pleasurable experience and a film I'm very proud of, and one that I was very lucky to be able to make and did me a lot of good, and from which I learned an incredible amount. So I'm very grateful to them.